It's incredible because you just mentioned some of the biggest foundations to become an exceptional leader, right? If you have excellent communication skills, and then you have compassion, empathy, those with those two things alone, you become a way better leader than everybody else. Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mansella. This podcast is dedicated to celebrate the lives of people that are making this world a better place by the impact that they are doing with their organizations. And today we have with us Dr. Burke Kline. How are you
Hello.
doing, Burke?
Yeah, I'm doing well. And yourself?
Good, good, good. Thank you. Thank you for being in the show, by the way.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So, as we were talking before, I always make a mistake pronunciating names. So, for the audience, can you tell me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Sure. My name is Burke Kline, and I am the CEO of Jefferson Community Health and Life, which is a critical access hospital in Fairbury, Nebraska.
Fantastic. Welcome to the show. Um, Tell me, what does it feel like to be on top of an organization like that?
Well, that's a good question. There's a lot of pressure, mostly because you're responsible for the entire organization. I'm in charge of a $40 million business. The board of directors has entrusted me financially and operational stability. So when we had, for instance, COVID, obviously one of the biggest things that's happened in our lifetime, when that happened, we had problems with new regulations coming out, staff shortages, supply chain shortages. Things were changing on a daily basis. So keeping all those things running to the best of my ability was very stressful. I love my job. I love what I do. It just sometimes, you have a lot of pressure put on you because this is your baby. This is your responsibility. And so making 300 some staff all work together to make it happen sometimes can be kind of frustrating. But all in all, I think that having that pressure on me from my board of directors, my staff, my community, I think has helped me stay focused and really focus in on what is needed rather than what we just kind of want at the time or what's trending.
Mhm.
So I'd say probably that would be the biggest thing that I take away from this position is just everyone's watching, everyone's expecting, and so fulfilling their expectations can be kind of stressful sometimes.
For sure. And it's admiring to have people like you filling up those positions of so much responsibility and actually performing an excellent job like you are. But I know it takes a lifetime of dedication to get there. So let's go back in time and let's take a time machine, if you will. And I want you to remember where were you on your last year in high school, and what was in your mind? What did you wanted to do back then for university or getting a job, or what happened?
Yeah, last year of high school. Well, that was 20 some years ago. But I was looking at going into law enforcement. So my senior year, I was looking at colleges, programs. I've wanted to be in law enforcement my entire life. My father was a former law enforcement officer. So probably looking at a career in that aspect, what courses I need to take, what career path I was going to take to become a police officer, which, spoiler alert, I did become a police officer and was one for 8.5 years.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's probably what I was doing my senior year of high school, excited to graduate, get out there, start my life.
Wow. Eh, Sometimes careers run in the family, right? For example, my father was still an entrepreneur. He had 7 businesses before he passed away. And all of the siblings, all of my siblings, we are all entrepreneurs. And I think you learn that from home. Um, it's interesting to see the big career change that you had in your life. So obviously you went to college to become a police officer, and that's not easy. I remember when I was going through college in computer science, I had I had friends that they aspired to become police officers, and getting accepted wasn't that easy. How do you manage all that? How do you navigate those waters?
Well, as far as the selection of me going to the academy, that was totally out of my hands. You're right, though. It is competitive to get into the police academy, and not everybody is accepted. I think that having the degree or a partial degree at that time in criminal justice really showed to them that I was, I guess, committed to the profession. Yeah, besides that, the academy, it was a long academy, and I went through it twice because I first went through to be certified as a police officer, and then I came back and went through it again to be certified as a canine handler with the Nebraska State Patrol. So I actually went through the academy twice, one for my dog and one for myself. And, you just take it one day at a time. What's coming next, for instance, if we're working on canine academy, okay, next I'm working on narcotics detection. So I focus on that. During my initial police academy, okay, what are we working on next? Felonies. Okay, focus on felonies. One step at a time, just like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. It's just kind of how you have to take it. Don't get overwhelmed.
And so you serviced for 8.5 years, you said, right?
Yep, that's right.
And so, what made you move out of the service? What were you? In what stage in your life were you to take that decision?
Yeah. So, I had been so as a deputy sheriff, I was the canine handler. I was the commander of the major crimes unit. I've been certified as a crime scene technician with the Orlando Police Department. And I was also the Team B SWAT team leader. So I was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with the dog, SWAT team, everything. Not to mention also an FTO officer where I was training other officers. But it came to a point where I started getting burned out. I could really feel that my demeanor had changed. And I didn't like that. Not to mention, me working nights and my wife working days, I barely got to see her. And we had 2 young girls under the age of 5 that we were raising. And so at the time, I thought, you know what, there has to be something different. I love my job. I love serving people and what I do. But to what cost? How is this impacting my family and my life? I started looking at different schools, and I went back to school and obtained my bachelor's degree at the time. Working on my master's, I decided to take a position at a local hospital nearby, Pawnee County Memorial Hospital, as the executive assistant to the CEO. And after I started doing that for a year, I moved into my master's program. Then ultimately my doctorate program. And my CEO at the time, Jim, was retiring and let me know that he was going to be moving on. And due to the fact that he was a contract administrator, he didn't have control over who got the position next or anything of that sort of the hiring process or interviewing process. So he let me know that, and he said, Burke, I think it might be good for you to just keep your eye open to other places. I don't know what these guys are going to do. So I did, and I actually found a position in Kansas as the CEO of Greeley County Health Services. And I took the position and was there for about 4 years until I got to this position where I'm at now. But ultimately, I got out of law enforcement because I was getting burned out, and I wasn't being as compassionate as I could have been just because I was so worn down by having to deal with the same stuff, the same people every single day. When you're on duty, you can be, we're taught at the academy that when you're on duty, you can be shot out for the car that you drive and the clothes you wear. And so you're always constantly have that level of nervousness or apprehension about almost everywhere, every circumstance, everywhere you go. So I thought, I need to take a break and try something different. And that's when I went back to college and started working in
Yeah,
health.
and when you overload your amygdala and you're always in fight or flight mode, it just wears you down. I was brought up in a country with they had a 37-year-old war, and so it was a civil war. And I remember coming out of going to school or going to work or going to university later on. It was hard because you were one step away from a bomb, you know, exploding or shooting on the street. That was common, right? Even though the war was mostly in the countryside, it always bleeded to the city. So I can only imagine what you were feeling during that time.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Right? What were your best lessons? What did you learn out of, in life from those 8.5 years of service?
Well, what I've learned from law enforcement is not to judge so quickly. You don't know all the circumstances. You don't know everything that's led up to where you're at now. So I guess making knee-jerk decisions and I guess assumptions aren't always a good thing. In fact, a lot of times, in my case, most of the time I was wrong. So, having compassion, understanding where people are coming from, because like I said, in law enforcement, you're meeting that person at their lowest they've been. And so you have to keep that in mind. Also, learning to talk to people and to speak to people on a certain level. For instance, in the police academy, they teach us a thing called verbal judo. And what that is you talk to people the way they talk to you. And so you guys are at the same level. And also how to combat them, kind of, with words, even tone, cool, calm, collected. But you get your point across a lot easier than arguing with somebody or trying to force your point down their throat. With verbal judo, a lot of times you can kind of have the person come to that conclusion on their own instead of having to force them to understand what you're trying to say. And also I guess I learned my absolute love for serving the community, for helping people out, to be the one that, I can do something for you. I can help you. I think that kind of stuff is very strong within me. A sense of community. As a hospital CEO and as a deputy sheriff, you are a vital part of the community. Everybody's looking at you. You are, you're a staple in the community. And with that being said, you have to act that way too. You have to make sure you're, I guess, being as professional as you can, but also showing compassion, being a good human being. But in this role, you are a public figure, and you are as well as a deputy sheriff or a police officer too. So, learning and navigating how that is, acting in public, which isn't hard, but making sure that you're representing your hospital or your employer the best that you can. It just doesn't happen overnight. You have to sometimes learn how to do that.
It's incredible because you just mentioned some of the biggest foundations to become an exceptional leader, right? If you have excellent communication skills, and then you have compassion, empathy, with those two things alone, you become a way better leader than everybody else.
Hopefully.
When you went to college, how did you decide what to study? Because you were in service. Obviously, your heart is for your community. What was in your mind when you were trying to pick your next career?
Yeah. So when I got out of law enforcement, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I was figuring something in healthcare. In fact, I was actually looking at being a nurse or assisted living home administrator, which I ultimately got my license for. But during the time that I was going through those courses to get my license, I realized that maybe the hospital setting might be more of what I'm thinking of or what I was more expecting. So with that, there's not really any license to be a hospital administrator, but there are requirements. And most of the time, there's a master's degree involved. So I did go back to school, and I did get my master's in healthcare administration, and realized that I probably should get a little bit more. So I got my black belt in Six Sigma, in Lean, TQM or TQMP, and then I went back and got my doctorate. After my doctorate, I got a postdoctorate from Harvard Business School and a second postdoctorate from University of Oxford. Now, right now, I'm working on my third master's in management. I just think that to get in this position, they're in a position that you're leading people. You need to be as educated as you can, especially a $40 million company.
Right.
You can't just work, make decisions on a whim or on a gut feeling. It's good to have some type of quantitative data to look at to make sure you're making the right decision. And with that, and to learn how to read that information, you need education. You really can't measure, or you can't measure what you can't measure. So if you can measure something, you can fix it, you can change it. But if you can't measure it, it can go on for a long time.
You're completely right, especially because you're managing a hospital where your decisions will actually impact the lives of people. Mm-hmm. It's different from managing a normal business where they sell a product or service that is adding value, but it's not actually life or death situation, right? Now, my curiosity is, when do you have time to have all this education while holding a full-time position?
Well, time management is what it is. I hold education and I hold my extracurricular activities. I'm on multiple boards, foundations, committees, and then of course school. And then I have my leisure time, which is working on cars, spending time with my family. It's just time management, and if it's a priority, you'll make the time for it. And that's kind of how I am. I know I need to get this done. The end result is going to be something that I'll have for the rest of my life. I will retain a lot of information. And also, what is next? What am I going to learn next? What's next in the next chapter? So there's some excitement to that. So, like I was saying, if you hold it as a priority, you'll find time to get it done. And that's why I balance, or try to balance a full-time job, my kids, my family, school. Then you have to have your own pleasure time to get away. You have to disconnect. And so being able to juggle that, and I've been juggling that for years and years and years now, I've gotten pretty good at it.
It's wonderful. Did you have a full-time job while you were going on during your doctorate degree?
I did. That's when I was in Tribune, Greeley County Health Services in Kansas. Yep. That's when I started working on my doctorate, or I guess I take that back. I was probably a quarter of the way through when I started working in Greeley County, and then I finished it while working there. I wasn't nearly as active outside of the community or outside of the hospital as far as boards that I was on and things to volunteer for. A lot of those things weren't available to volunteer for there, so I had a lot more time. And so weekends and nights and days after work, I'd be working on my dissertation or my research study or what have you. So, I don't know if I could do a doctorate again where I'm at now and what I'm doing now, but at that time, it happened to work out perfectly.
One of these podcasts is called Break Free, because a lot of people have these limiting beliefs that keep them stuck in the situation they are at. For example, you were a police officer and you invested a lot of your life into becoming an officer and then growing inside your service as a leader in there. So most people will say, well, I'm stuck. This is the career that I chose, and I have, combined with schooling, maybe more than 10 years in it. And so this is what I shall do for the rest of my life, even though it wasn't fulfilling anymore. And you had, you were not giving the proper service that your family required, which is your highest priority. And I'm saying this because I know so many people with so much potential that they get stuck in a position that maybe they grew out of, but they are so afraid to go back to school and do it all over again. Oh, I'm 32 years old. I learned this the first time from my grandfather. My grandfather wanted to become a civil engineer, but he already was married and he had a full-time job. He had to leave the career halfway through. So to make the long story short, he ended up becoming an accountant, a certified accountant, and he was making his living like that. But then he realized that that wasn't enough. So at 48, he went back to school to have the next level of financial services in university, and he graduated at the age of 51. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And from 51 until he was 82 years old, he kept that career, and it changed his life.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so people think, oh, I'm too old, I'm 30, and I'm 35 or 40. You can actually reinvent yourself at any time in your life, especially if you're in North America with so many opportunities. And don't be afraid to go back to school for 4 or 5 years. I mean, people think it's a long time, but if you consider the time span that you're going to be on this earth, it's just a blink of an eye, isn't it?
Yeah, you only have to do it once. You only have to go back to school one time and get the degree one time. So once you have it for life. And that degree opens so many doors of different opportunities that you can do if you're not feeling, fulfilled in the job that you're doing. Life's too short. And if you're stuck in something that you don't want to do, you're wasting your life. That's how I see it, at least. I'm not done yet. I might not be a hospital administrator forever. I might go do something else. Who knows what I'll do next? But I'm not going to let stereotypes and, mainstream thinking about, I'm 30 some years old, I'm too old to go back to school, or I'm too old to start this new career. No, you're never too old. And I'm going to keep on going on, see what else is out there.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me, at the hospital, what has been some of the biggest problems, and how were you able to overcome them?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, COVID obviously just devastated the world, basically, and so that was a big obstacle to overcome, and we're still not 100% there yet, but we're getting pretty close. How did I overcome that? Well, I don't know if I overcame that or if I endured that. I survived that, and a lot of CEOs didn't. I know that. Becker's Hospital Review put out a review back in September of last year where they had, I think it was 668 CEOs resign.
Wow.
There's just so many issues with staffing, with financial restraints. It's not an easy job to do. And so I think, first of all, not an easy job to do, but then multiply that by having a world pandemic going on, and then a staffing shortage, and then regulation coming out limiting the staff that you have to work. Just everything. It was just very, very roll with the punches. Okay, what's next? We can do this, guys. Almost having to turn yourself into a cheerleader for the rest of your hospital or your business, just to make sure that their mentality and their morale is low. Everyone's scared. We're working short staff. We're working long hours. Nobody knows exactly how this virus is going to react with everybody, or even the vaccine. So being a cheerleader and reassuring your staff, hey, we're going to get through this together. We're here for you. Bringing them little things, even as gestures of appreciation, like, ordering pizza or something, just because, they're working late. We did it together. We got through this together. My staff and I, and the healthcare industry in general, we made it through. We're still not 100% yet. We're still getting used to how things are now. It's a different new, or the new, or whatever you want to call it. But we're all learning it. And my staff did a great job. So they're the ones that I think they actually carried me through it, because they were exceptional.
That's beautiful. You know, one of my passions outside of work is scuba diving. And when I was learning how to do that many years ago, my dive instructor told me that the steering wheel of your body is your head. So if I wanted to scuba dive down, I just needed to look down. If I wanted to go up, I look up, same sideways. And then my body would follow because you need to learn navigation underwater. And I came to realize that what you just said is exactly the same thing for our organization. You kept positive. You kept cheering the people. You kept saying, we're going to get through this. And they were looking at the head. So wherever the mood of the head is and the direction of the head, that's where the body goes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crucial, because if you are a leader that is pessimistic, that always overrunning their staff, and it's my way or the highway, that's how organizations fail. And that's how you have horrible work environments, right?
It's very toxic.
How do you keep a good work culture in a hospital? Because by definition, it's a chaotic environment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. You know, it's really what it comes down to is you have to just be the best you can be, and it hopefully becomes contagious. So by saying that, I mean having a smile on your face, being kind. Remember to be kind to people, because when people get stressed out, they forget that. That's the first thing they forget, is to be kind. And I feel that they're the ones that need it the most in that moment. So being kind, be understanding, talk slower, you know, smile, be pleasant. You just got to do that. And hopefully in most cases, in my experience, it catches on in one way or another. A little thing that I do is, in my previous hospital, my HR director and I came up with this new program called, it starts with hello. And basically what that is you say hello to everybody in the hallway, you smile, you greet everyone. Even if you walk past that person 19 times in the past hour, you always say hello and you smile. And that encourages engagement between staff in a positive environment and with a positive communication, you know, hello, how you doing, you know, type of thing. You know, there's different ways of doing it, but really it has to start with you. You have to be the beacon. You have to be the ray of light that in these dark times where people are feeling low, you gotta be the guy that's showing the kindness, that is trying to help and make things better and being sincere about it. You know, that's basically what I do. I know that my hospital, our culture here is extraordinary. We are a family. We do help out. We step in when someone's needing help. It's awesome. And so being a part of that and helping drive that and be a cheerleader for that is amazing. And that's just kind of what I do. My admin team, I would say they all have a part in that as well, where they work with their staff. And so it's just kind of contagious and it just spreads in a good way.
Incredible. You know, it's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes the simple things are the ones that make the most impact, right? If you had access to go back in time and talk to your 28 years old version of yourself, what advice will you give him?
At that time, I was still a deputy sheriff, so I just say, hold on. It does get better. There was a time, like I said, when I got burned out, I started to go down kind of a dark hole. And that happens in law enforcement. They say the average officer is a police officer for 5 years. If you last more than 5 years, you're better than average, I guess. I just tell myself to hold on. It gets better. There's a lot more opportunity and exciting things to come. So.
That's wonderful. One last question before we finish the podcast. I really want to respect your time. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
You know, it would be something along the lines of, we're all in this together, show loving kindness. That's what it comes down to. Loving kindness, it might sound kind of sappy, but really that would solve a lot of problems in the world and a lot of miscommunications. I think that it also would promote a lot more teamwork. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be rude, and some people think that I'm stressed out, so that gives me the right to be rude or the right to, because I have this thing going on, and that's not true at all. I guess just we're in this together, show love and kindness.
It's beautiful. What a simple and profound piece of advice, especially nowadays that everything is so polarized, that people have to have their opinion or the highway, and we stop talking to each other, and we stop having some flexibility to understand everybody else's opinion, and learning to agree to disagree for Christ's sake. It's like, come on, we're humans and we're in this together, and the world is getting harder by the minute. So let's try to have this life path in an easier way by helping each other out.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking and saying. Let's help each other out.
Dr. Klein, thank you so much for your time. If people would like to get in touch with you to ask a couple of questions, are you on LinkedIn or somewhere on social media where they can reach out?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. Yep, you can find me, Burke Kline. So easy to find.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being in the show. God bless you and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Cheers.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.